In this video, let's take an in-depth look at distance attenuation, which is one of the most important factors for sound design in 3D games. Lyra project has some excellent graphs showing how you can incorporate distance into your sound effects. In the plugin content folder, you can find a graph called Lyra Pistol Fire. This graph is built based on the structure of the graph used for Gunshots and Lyra. Here is the original graph. It's quite big, with many mixers and filters. And as you can see, all of these are controlled by a variable named distance. Basically, this variable returns the distance between the player and the location where this graph is spawned. MetaSounds will automatically create this variable when you add its attenuation interface. Let's start from the beginning. For the punching effect, each sound is sorted into close, distance, and far categories. The higher the frequency, the more they are absorbed when traveling in the air. Notice how the distance one has less energy in high frequency bands than the close one. Inside this node, they're crossfading based on the distance from the player. This creates very good results. In our graph, we follow a simpler approach. Because we can control both the speed and pitch separately, we simply use distance to change these parameters. Of course, if you want to do the same as in Lyra, you can make more variations for the punch effect and crossfade the outputs. By the way, this is the actual graph we used to stress test the plugin in Lyra. The one inside the plugin content folder doesn't have these post filters. I'll talk more about it later. Now, the same is done for the reverb noise effect. For the mechanical sound and the sweetener effect, the amplitude is simply adjusted based on distance. Then all of these are mixed together. After that, they are passed through a distance-based high pass. Even though low frequencies can travel farther, they also arrive slower. Thus, at a far distance and with enough energy, you will hear the middle frequencies before the low ones. So here, low frequencies are simply cut off, which is good enough for games, and also more desirable if you try to actually delay the low frequencies. Then, in an FPS games, they will become a big mess very fast. Most sound effects in games and movies aren't very realistic. They are carefully modified and mixed to give a good listening experience. The final two stages are kind of self-explanatory, but overall a very complicated graph with triple quality. It always amazed me how much work is actually poured into Lyra project. One final thing, do not confuse the attenuation interface with the attenuation settings. They are two separate things. While you don't need to set up an attenuation settings preset for the interface to work, you should still set up one to make use of the engine spatialization. Well, you can just copy and reuse all the presets used in Lyra. They cover most of the commonly used sound effect categories. Now let's get back to our synthesizers. As mentioned before, we don't have post filters here, while it's easy to just copy and paste those nodes. For synthesizers, it's kind of inefficient to do post filtering, because we can control all frequencies directly. We can simply reduce their gains before starting to generate new signals. This will have much better performance and avoid latency issues when passing through too many filters. So in future updates, we will introduce new nodes to do just that. Initially, we intend to add new inputs to old synthesizers, but they become very long, and we don't want to make them look like the scratching synthesizers. So we're trying a new approach that gives better user experience and flexibility. There will be something like this node. There will be a lot of new stuff in the next update. The most exciting thing is this vehicle engine synthesizer. Like you might have known, we have a way to synthesize electric motor sound effects. But for combustion engines used in vehicles, it isn't good enough. Now, we have found a solution for that. And here is a test for a rally car. Sound really close to the real recording. There's still some work to be done on the starting and changing gear parts. But the great thing about these new synthesizers is that we don't need residual synthesizers to create noise. Residual synthesizers are great when you want to perfectly recreate the sound, but they're still based on recordings. Thus, they can be too repeated for infinite duration sound effects. And they have higher memory and CPU costs than modal synthesizers. Now, we can just use a white noise generator and modal parameters to recreate the noise of engines. Here is the white noise. And here is the result. Also, the synthesizer is as fast as playing a WAV file to a WAV player node. Being able to generate noise from modal at such a low CPU cost is really a big step for us. The next update will be really big and has a lot of meaningful changes. The bad news is that it will also take a while. So that's why we want to share our current progress through this video. In the next video, we will share more about vehicle engine synthesizers. And I'll see you again then.